Hello?
Hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Oh, hello, Barney.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
Bonjour.
Hi.
How you doing there? Yellow. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Yo.
Hello. 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 Hello.
Hey friends, Mark Mandel here. Welcome to episode number 5 of Customer Experience Tales from the Trenches. Thanks for coming here with me today. I'm so glad you're here. We're going to have what I think is my best show yet today. It's a show that I'm proud to share with you and to have you come on this journey with me and a couple of my friends today. Here's the game plan for today's show, just to kind of lay it out for you. We're going to spend about 10 minutes at the beginning here of the show to talk about a couple of really important topics, especially one in specific, knowing that this week, at least here in the United States, is Thanksgiving. And I'm going to talk a little bit about things that are going on in my life that I'm truly thankful for. And I'm going to come back to that in just a second. I'm also going to be talking about a couple of things that I've come across in our CX work that just dazzled me. Couple of things that have some commercial appeal and a couple that are just really cool that I wanted to talk to you about. And then for the heart of the show, the real reason we're together here today is, like with the prior shows, I invite a good friend on. And here I'm going to bring a gentleman that I want you to meet. His name is Ben Henson. And Ben is with a company called Peel. And we're going to talk a lot about Peel and Ben's views on AI and the role that it plays in CX work, in customer both experience and engagement. We're going to have a really open and frank conversation, he and I, and that's going to be the heart of the show. Some of the other things we're going to do while we're together today, one of the things that you guys have given me feedback about is you've enjoyed one particular segment of this show in the past where I've shared some books, CX books with you. I call it my Customer Experience Book Club. We're going to do that again today also toward the end of the show. So let's get this started by just simply realizing that since this is only episode 5 of this show, some of you guys who are out there listening right now may not have heard the previous 4 episodes, and I'm not here to recap those for you. But I am here to just describe the show for you a little bit so you know why we're here and what we're going to try to do, both today and going forward. This show, again, Customer Experience Tales from the Trenches, it's a show that we've put together that I'm really proud of. And what it's about, it's really, we're looking at customer experience through 2 distinct lenses here. We want to look at it through the lens of some amazing breakthrough innovations, some real big ideas that are coming down the pike or that are here now that are just that cool that I think you need to hear about. And then we're going to look at it through the human lens and the people behind that work. So in some cases, we're going to bring on folks to have conversations about things that they believe in. In some cases, we're going to bring out technology that we think is groundbreaking. But all in all, the purpose of that show here, the Tales from the Trenches show, is to kind of give you a monthly look at something that is new and different in the world of customer experience. We've also done a couple of other shows in addition to my Tales from the Trenches show. You may remember I've done a short show called Customer Experience Minute to Win It that I'm doing once a week or twice a week. And I'm glad that many of you have found that show and many of you have shared very positive feedback about it, as well as a show that I think might be another favorite of mine, a show that I'm calling CX Unsung Heroes. And Unsung Heroes is kind of really the human element of customer experience. This is where we start to take a look at some of the people who are really operating some of these amazing CX roles in these teams that are kind of well behind the scenes and people who don't necessarily always get out in the limelight. And I bring one friend on from the industry each episode to really give them the spotlight that I think that they deserve. Those shows will be coming up again in the next couple of weeks. I'm sure if you keep your eye out for them, you'll see plenty about that. Now, I think if I look in the course of the entire year, my favorite U.S. holiday is Thanksgiving. In part, because I love the food. Not going to mislead you about that. But also because I feel these days that I have so much to be thankful for. And I want to take a moment to give appropriate shout outs to a handful of people that really give me the reason to feel thankful. Firstly, and I'll say unquestionably most important, is my wife, Lisa. And it's not just because she's been my wife and because she's been good to me for so many years. That I take as true, but there's more. It was 6 months ago this week that I sat down with Lisa and I said, I would love to be able to walk away from my job and see if I could go be an entrepreneur and go out on my own and build something that I'm proud of. But it's going to mean for some extended period of time, perhaps, going without a paycheck or the peace of mind that that cash flow brings. And would she be okay with that, knowing that if her answer was no, none of this would have happened? But she said, go for it. She said, yeah, you need to do what you need to do. And what that's enabled me to do, my friends, is really to develop my voice, to find my voice in this space, in this CX space, whether it be through programming like this type of content that we do here, or just in my day-to-day work with many of you. You know, Lisa and her willingness to say, let's put the idea of the peace of mind that the job brings aside and go see what can come, has allowed me to really find a new place for myself in this industry. And I'll never not be thankful to her for that. There's no work I feel like I was more cut out to do than the work I'm doing today here, you know, with my wow moments and these other program shows that I'm doing. So Lisa, thank you. I also want to thank my partner clients. I get the privilege every single day of working with some of the biggest, most thoughtful innovators in our CX space. Some of these guys are client-side folks. Some of these guys are vendor-side folks. But these are people out there making a difference day in and day out. And without having to give you a rifle shot through other names and places, you've heard many of them in the past, I just want to make sure that they all know that I'm truly grateful for their partnership. And then lastly, but by no means least importantly, I'm thankful for you guys. You guys who took the time to listen to these shows, to come on this journey with me, to share feedback, to share comments, and to be part of this with me. You guys are why I do this. And you guys make all the difference. So I want to really stop and say thank you for that. This year for Thanksgiving, you've given me so much to be thankful for. Now, let's take a minute while we're together and just start to talk about some things that have been going on around me that I've noticed that I'm really excited about. And there's a couple of things I'm going to call my wow moments while we're together here that I want to talk about. And there's two in particular. One, just a cool as heck piece of technology that if you haven't seen it, you got to go check it out. You know, we'll talk about that now. It looks to me, and I'm not even sure the true origins of this. This is just something I stumbled on, but it looks to be like an experiment or like a proof of concept of sorts coming out of Google. And I believe it's called Notebook ML. And what Notebook allowed me to do, I had heard about Notebook from a friend, and they said, go check out Google's Notebook thing. You're going to be pretty amazed by it. And what it turned out to be, at least for me, was it said, imagine if you can take a website that has a generative AI platform on it and take that Gen AI platform and literally load it with some ad hoc content. So in my case, I took a couple of PDFs about a particular company, and I took a PowerPoint deck about that company, and I put the website URL of that company into this notebook.ml website. And I said, go learn about this company. And then I pushed a button on the website, and it literally made a podcast. It made two people sitting there naturally having a 30-minute conversation completely made up about that company. I was just, my brain exploded. If you haven't heard of Notebook, go check it out. I have no connection to those guys at Google other than to say I found them and I'm fascinated by it. And you got to check them out if you really want to see an interesting use case. I assure you, though, as I sit here, I am not an output of that. I'm the real guy sitting here. The other thing I want to talk about from a wow moment perspective is a friend of mine. You know, if you don't know Sean Albertson, you should. Sean Albertson has been a longtime CX client-side guy. He spent the last number of years at Schwab running a lot of their CX function over there. And he's since gone out on his own as a consultant, just as an independent guy. But in fact, he's written a book that we're going to come back and talk about in a few minutes. But what I really want to talk about relative to Sean, he's decided to play a pretty unique role in customer experience over the last month or two. He came to me and a handful of other folks and said, I'm thinking about building a CX community, a community of different types of experts and people in the industry who want to be able to help serve customers in a more thoughtful and complete way than each of us can do on our own, and to create like a consortium of independent CX folks who are there to cooperate with each other and help folks who want the help. He calls it CX on the Rocks. And if you don't know CX on the Rocks, you can find him on the web, and talk to Sean about his community that he's launching. It's going to be a big deal, my friends. And I get to be a kind of a co-founding part of that, just as an aside. But that said, you should totally go check out what Sean's up to. Guys, while we're talking about Sean, it bears, on an earlier show, I held up a copy of this book. This is Sean's recently published book called Customer Experience Obstacles, 4 Rocks: Reduce Effort, Drive Loyalty, and Transform the Customer Journey. I was reading this book. I got about, 70, 80% of the way through. And, I just took so many notes. I mean, I have half of the pages here folded down and highlighted with my highlighter. This is a terrific book. And I could tell you that if you're interested in some really new thinking, and specifically the thinking that Sean touches on is about effort. Think about, understanding, is an easy experience considered a good experience? Sometimes not. But Sean talks a lot about this idea of rocks. It's no different. He makes the metaphor of rocks in a river and how the rocks cause the water to divert when it's getting from the source to the destination. And sometimes if that water is the flow of the customer's experience through their own journeys, they really want to have as straight as a line as possible and not have to zigzag to get where they're going. And Sean talks a lot about ways to look at customer effort through a new lens. All I would really add to what Sean's thinking in this book is one topic that I think a lot about, which is effort might also be relative to customers' expectations, but that's a different conversation. The reason I'm talking about Sean's book is not just to encourage you to go to Amazon or wherever your bookstore is to pick this up, but to just let me know if you want a copy of this. And like I've done on previous shows, I have a small number of copies of this here that I could send out to you as my gift for being here with me. Or if I run out, I'll go to Amazon and I'll buy you a copy and I'll send it to you. All you need to do is message me here and say, hey, I would love a copy of Sean's book. And I'll make sure one way or another you get that. I think it's a terrific book and I think it's well worth taking a look at. So Sean Albertson, 4 Rocks is the book. If you want a copy, ping me and let me know. It'll be my pleasure to get you a copy. Guys, let's change gears for a minute here. In my opinion, there's few topics more important to any of us right now in this space, whether we're CX folks or not, than AI. And what role does AI play in our toolbox, in our strategy, in our engagement models? What role does AI play? I had an opportunity to talk about this and wrote a chapter in another book a while back. And a while back, I made a hypothesis. And I said, back then, I'm not sure, and this is a year ago, I'm not sure that AI is truly ready to be externally facing at that point. But it was really a very appropriate tool to be inward facing, meaning as an enabler to us to do our jobs better. Fast forward the clock a year, I think we're in a dramatically different spot right now. And I think that we're at a point now where AI is emerging in very specific ways and very specific use cases that makes a great deal of sense to unlock and open up to customer-facing opportunities. I'm gonna ask my good friend Ben from Peel to join me in just a second, who I know will come in with a lot of ideas and thoughts. We're going to just hopefully try to unpack this idea together of whether or not AI is ready, what role it makes sense to play, where the opportunities are, and frankly, just some real world use cases and things that Ben has seen in his career that make the most sense. So rather than belabor this, let's bring Ben into the stage here and an opportunity to introduce Ben to you guys and you guys to Ben. Ben, welcome.
Mark, thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to Lisa. I'm so glad she let us play in the playground together.
Lisa's by far really my better half, and we could have a whole discussion about that.
That's obvious.
Ben, I've come to know you a little bit and a bit about Peel over the last little bit, and I'm impressed. But it dawns on me that there's a lot of people that might be listening to this that don't know you or your business. Can you take just a minute and just introduce yourself and your business so we know kind of who you are and where you're coming from?
Absolutely. Well, I've been in the digital marketing space since there was digital marketing to be in. So I got out of college at the University of Vermont right at the turn of the century, as I like to say, late 90s, early 2000s, and started selling lead generation. And I worked in the lead generation space for many, many years, serving marketers, CMOs on down, typically in B2B, SaaS, and ultimately within the enterprise. Although I've always had plenty of friends in the commercial hyper-growth mid-market space as well. And over time, as we filled up their databases and we got marketing automation set up and we figured out sort of all of the different ways that we could work with our customers in new and interesting ways and serve them, it became abundantly clear that we needed a lead management tool to be able to ingest that data correctly. So it actually became actionable. In the early days with some of my mentors, like the great Scott Vaughn, we used to just say, can I just get the damn leads into Marketo? Like, how do I actually input that stuff? And sure. So my last tenure W2 was Integrate, and Integrate was ultimately a lead management platform. We validated and standardized, made sure everything was compliant. When I left Integrate with a mission, and that mission was, first, I sold the leads. Then I got the leads stood up and organized in a good, meaningful, productive way. And what we saw as the next step was the conversion was broken. LTV was climbing through the roof. CAC was a real problem. I had served there as the senior vice president of growth. So I sat across the organization from net new all the way through life cycle. And just the complexity of how we were dealing with customers and sort of what we were thinking about, that's where I really loved to dig in. I love those big, hairy problems and how can we sort of solve this stuff in an ongoing way. And then Peel really answered that question. So Peel uses AI as a bridge for meaningful life cycle engagement. And how can we find ways to have conversations with our customers that don't require a 30-minute Zoom call, that don't require picking up the phone, that don't require all of these things that become these friction points and these restrainers from the actual work getting done. And that was the genesis of Peel, and that's the mission we're on today, is we want to automate conversations so that the meaningful heart of the matter kind of conversations can still be conducted human to human, but all of that information, all of that discovery need, that intake at the doctor's office is completed. So when you're actually in these conversations, you can get down to it.
Interesting. So from a CX, since a lot of the folks who listen to our show are CX folks. So let's talk about that in the lens of CX for a minute. So for me, think about history for a minute. Right? Customer experience people love customer feedback. Mm-hmm. Right? We live and die in the world of customer conversation. That's our thing. And over the years, we've seen a couple of kind of phase shifts in that feedback world. Right? We've seen. I mean, I'm an old guy, so I remember pre your 2000 graduation timeframe, when the big breakthrough was surveys that could go out on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Right? We're no longer sending them in the mail, and we're no longer relying on phone calls necessarily to do this. Right? We're going to send out an email survey, and we're going to blast it out to 100,000 people, and we're going to get some responses, and we're going to tabulate our findings and live happily ever after. Fast forward 20 some odd years, we're at a point now where that's gotten really hard.
Yes.
Right? Where
Yes.
people are turned off.
Yes.
Right? And response rates that used to be 30% are now 3%.
Brutal.
Right? And so we rely on other mechanisms now. So think about how else we learn about our customers.
Mm-hmm.
One way is we conduct in-depth interviews. Right? And that's rich with learning, but very expensive to conduct. Right? If you think about a typical interview, it could be a couple $100 in just administrative costs to orchestrate.
Without a doubt. Yeah,
right?
Without a doubt. And a huge commit too, right?
And so you have to limit. You can say, well, maybe we could run 10 of them, maybe we run 15 of them. And that's where we have to shut it off because of time, effort, money. But I hear what you're saying, and tell me if I'm getting this right, that Peel is in effect could be the application of things that we learned from our moving to the internet for surveying, but with qualitative, in-depth conversational feedback now.
Yeah. Peel's an asynchronous engagement platform for B2B. So it could truly span the entire gap of revenue.
Sure.
And I'll even push back for just a second to say, no CX professional is not in sales. Every single CX professional is in sales. We're always selling something, whether it's to our partner about what movie we're going to watch or what dinner we're going to eat tonight, all the way through. And it's been my experience over the last 9 months that I have not met with a single customer experience team, not one that isn't either discussing or currently owns the expansion, upsell, renewal, cross-sell motion. And there's a lot of people that just aren't prepared for that. That's not in their DNA as they think, and it's not on their resume in the past. So what Peel can do for that is help customers share feedback in an engaging way. It's intuitive, it's free from bias, it's free from recency bias, it's free from language bias, it's free from time bias, all those different things. But it has, if a let me get my hands in the window here. If one side's a survey and one side's a conversation, here's where Peel exists, right in the middle. And what we wanted to accomplish with that is as much as we as CX professionals, as marketers, as sellers, as those shepherds and stewards of our customers within an organization, what we should focus on is how enabled is that customer? How well does that customer feel that they've engaged and squeeze the juice from the product that they've chosen to purchase with us, and that they feel enabled to be able to use our product in the best way possible. So while I want to stay focused on how can the customer learn from, how can the company learn from the customer, and how can we sort of move through these processes, we have a very customer-centric view and lens and paradigm about let's get them enabled, let's get them onto the next thing. And we can do that in these ways that have never existed before, because surveys are okay, but they're flat, they're static, they're cumbersome. As you rightfully said, they're extremely difficult to get engagement through. And unfortunately, they're static. So the second they're complete, they're stale. By the time it's handed over and that information's dissected and disseminated and uplifted and all that stuff, they almost need to start thinking about it again. The way Peels are built is they're evergreen. They're reusable, durable conversations. You perfect these conversations, whether it's about interviews, whether it's the modern day NPS, whether it's a 1 month post close onboarding usage conversation that doesn't require a human to human, doesn't require scheduling, it doesn't require speaking whatever language the customer is most comfortable in, but it does allow them to solicit that feedback, engage it, and because it's a reusable conversation, the more people you get to go into that conversation, the more you'll see trending, qualitative and quantitative analysis, learnings, how can we enable differently, how do we have to shape product, how do we have to do all these different things, because the data collection at the end of it is not also going either static into a survey or never going to go anywhere, if we're being honest, because it went to a human. And we know how people update Salesforce, and it's not as programmatic as it should be.
That's really resonating with me. But let's no pun intended, let's peel this down another level or two. And what I want to get to, many people who listen to this show and who are in the CX space see a friend of mine as a bit of a industry folk hero. His name is Bruce Temkin, and Bruce Temkin is a really notable guy out there. And Bruce is a friend. And I remember having a conversation with Bruce a couple of years ago, and we're talking about customer feedback versus customer conversation, and how a couple of things came to light out of that for me. First, people, while they may dislike surveys, they love having conversations, right? They really, it's a more natural means of sharing information with somebody. And when you think about the survey as a means of trying to replicate that, we've committed so many flaws in our thinking over the years in surveying. Think about, like, if we were having a conversation, Ben, like this, and we could just sit and talk with each other in a natural way, that makes perfect sense. But how weird would it be if you joined me in a conversation and I sat here and I looked you right in the eyes and said, Ben, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely would you be to, you'd be like, you're a weirdo, shut up.
Yeah, what are we doing here? Yeah,
nobody talks like that.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about here is moving the needle from data collection to conversation.
It's a brave new world, man. Like, let's lean into learning truly about that individual, and we'll be able to stack rank. If you want that quant that the survey provides, get enough people to complete the peel and the quant comes out. You want multiple choice for a question? Sure. Okay, that could be good. But anytime I hear a multiple choice, I think that's about the company, not the customer. Anytime you have an open text field, it's about the customer. But when it's in a survey or any sort of typed format, for the most part, truncated. When we get into a conversation, verbose. So it's the idea that through some gentle questioning, being inquisitive, being curious, which is how Peel is built, your answer should decision tree out into more questions. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So for example, with many of our modern day NPS type peels that we've created for customers, what those look like is this topic based container of a conversation. But if that conversation starts going into the positive, it will immediately begin creating customer testimonial type inputs for that peel. If that peel conversation is going negative, it will immediately start the triage. Okay, tell me more. Who else? How's this being impacted? So that the CX professional who receives that completed peel is immediately able to action, whether it's, hey, get this over to the product team, get this over to the marketing team. These guys are going gangbusters. We ought to have a real conversation. We really ought to find out what's working. Why is this working so well for them when others may struggle, or whatever the case may be? Versus, okay, this is a red account. We need to deal with this immediately. We have bias-free analysis of what that is, so the customer doesn't have to feel bad because they really like Mark and they don't want to insult Mark and they don't want to call your baby ugly. But hey, this thing's not going to renew. They know that 6 months in advance because they just can't put that square hole into the round peg, or vice versa, and strike that reverse it. Yeah, but you know what I mean. It's like, these are the sorts of things, and this is the elegance of AI. AI, as we use it, gives that ability to have that flexibility of an authentic conversation within the container of how it should be organized, but it keeps all of the beauty of an asynchronous conversation, a non-human to human conversation.
So it sounds like what you're able to do in an asynchronous way now is in effect, meet the buyer or meet the customer where they are in their own readiness to have that conversation. Right?
100%.
You're not forcing your agenda on them. They're going to say, okay, I'm ready to talk with you, and here's the channel through which I'm going to carry on this conversation.
Mark, all the way down to what time they want to do it. What if you're a new parent and you're at 2 a.m, you've been up,
Yeah.
kid finally fell asleep, and you're like, well, I'm up now, right? Well, you can go on that appeal and you can complete that. Or you could, right when the email was received, or right when you clicked on the link on the webpage, you could go into it from there. So the ability to make it entirely about that individual, that's true one-to-one marketing, whether you're a prospect or a customer. It's that engagement that is for them, it is about them, it directs based on how they answer questions, so it stays about them, and then it allows you to have outcomes which serve them.
That sounds so powerful. One of the things that, I don't want to sound like a troublemaker, some people talk about that, are doubting Thomases out there. Kind of the argument is AI going to go off the rails? Is it going to carry on a crazy conversation with a customer? Is there a risk of it just kind of hallucinating and doing the wrong thing at the wrong time? I have to assume that you guys have thought about how to create guardrails around these conversations. Can you talk a little bit about just kind of what the thought that's gone into those guardrails and how they sit?
Yep, absolutely. So hallucinations are the real deal, particularly around math, as we all know. Peel's organized differently. So in the common AI agents that so many, Benioff on down are talking about today, that's a individual coming into this conversation, whether it's conversational, whether it's chat, whatever it is, and going in to learn in a way that is very focused on whatever core materials have been promoted to it from that organization. And you're going to be able to, like, we see this a ton with like help desk and support and all those things. And this is it's a really good use case. And I think that those companies are going to be wildly successful. I'm hearing really, really great results from that. We approach this entirely differently. What we want to do is shift that paradigm 180 degrees. So instead of being the end all expert about this company's X, Y, and Z, what our job at Peel is to create these conversations that interview the prospect or the customer. So in these settings where we got really good is at the discovery, at sort of the question sets, et cetera. So we want to be inquisitive. We do train based on, hey, this is the container of information you should be thinking about for any of these categories. But we're not offering this tool to be able to become, get your question answered and move on. What our job is to give that inquisitive information nudge so they go, I really ought to take that next step. I really ought to go have that conversation with the team or support this information and be able to move on. So we're in the data collection business rather than the data giving or information giving business. We're going to help them frame their problems. We're going to help them frame what opportunities may exist to solve for those, whatever that may be. But it's much more about that individual at this point in time versus us being literal experts and trying to replace humans from a subject matter expertise perspective.
But this sounds like a killer app to me in terms of just feedback curation and taking conversational feedback from customers and prospects and even ex-customers and getting people to really open up. And you were saying before, and I think this bears drilling into for a minute. I remember when people went from paper surveys years ago to phone surveys, and weirdly, SAT scores went down. Right? And you touched on this a minute ago, and when you talked about bias. And this whole idea that the person sharing their story with the interviewer was afraid to insult the interviewer by saying it was terrible.
It was awful. I hated
right?
it.
Right. So instead they go, it was pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I'll give it 4 stars. I'll
Yeah.
give it a 4, right?
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's not representative of the truth. And then when we moved from that modality to the internet, scores tended to move back down again. And then they said, oh, people must not like internet surveys because the scores are down. But the reality is that was a more reflective, truthful representation of how people felt.
Right.
Right. Because there was no intermediary there that would be upset by the conversation.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're taking learnings from kind of what we learned on the internet versus phone versus paper, and you're taking these conversations now 10 levels deeper, but in a way that gives people who are sharing those thoughts, their feedback, and their stories a medium that they could just open up on their terms, on their time frames, and to in effect tell their story.
Violent agreement. I think in the way that I think about it is the halo effect versus the shadow effect. Good quality information, good quality experience has one of those two impacts, either sort of the halo of, wow, that actually helped me move through, or the shadow of, I'm never going to talk to these guys again. I don't recommend them to anybody, and they'll never know it. Both of those dynamics are very, very, very difficult to quantify because they don't come back to us. That's not typically feedback. That's just what's happening. That's the reverberation, the ripples that you are within sort of the greater landscape of the market. So when we think about Peel, particularly, one of the problems we wanted to solve is frequency of these conversations. What if I programmatically was able to deploy conversations in an ongoing basis, a stepped approach throughout the life cycle of that customer, so that I'm looking after them in the same exact way in an ongoing way, time and time and time again. So they never get to the shadow effect, because when they buy, they're happy. They said yes. They're
Yep.
in. They're ready to
Yep.
go. But how many of us as CX professionals, and I've sat in that seat for a long time as well, how many of us have had to contend with missold deals,
Sure.
different expectations among buying teams, decision makers, power users, executive sponsors, sort of worthy consultants, or sort of whoever those tertiary type people are that are involved in these processes. How many times have we actually gotten to the onboard and go, whoa, 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 we're not even aligned on what we're solving for, or the order in which we're solving these things. In the crawl, walk, run approach, we're just backwards right now. Or half of you are over here, half of you are over here, et cetera. I mean, these are fundamental issues that get a customer on the wrong foot.
Yep.
Right at the beginning of that conversation. So if we can continue in a consistent manner, stay in touch with them, understand what's going on, and broadly speaking, for our enterprise professionals listening right now, you have a 25, 30, 35 strong buying and user team. Keeping tabs in that sort of way is incredibly difficult. I mean,
Sure.
one of the greatest joys I've had throughout my career is introducing colleague to colleague at enterprises that have never even met each other. So it's like that kind of stuff. What if we could do that? What if we could give great customer consistently? And then the NPS score, or whatever the future, the net Peel score in the future. I mean, those sorts of things will never be a surprise. Like, could we imagine that world where you're not like, oh, let's see how this thing turns out? Let's
Yep.
make it about them every single way, all the way through that self-education. Let them do the thing they want to do.
I think as CX folks, there's a lot we could unpack from that and really learn that. I just have 2 more quick questions for you, but they're important ones. As a co-founder of Peel, I'm curious what your view is for the future. In other words, you've delivered on what you're talking about today and continue to. But if you could dare to dream, Peel in 18 months, or Peel in 24 months, or Peel in 3 years, what does that look like?
A lot of happy customers. I mean, this is truly, and I'm talking about our customer's customer. And the way that we can do this is through conversation automation, through programmatic deployment of regular and frequent peels throughout that life cycle, so that they have somewhere to go that's easy, it's friction free. We want to do really, really, really big things, but that doesn't need to be really, really broad things.
Sure.
What we want to do is give the customer, our customer, an ability to have an ongoing, valuable, self-directed experience.
Cool.
And if they can do that, if they can truly squeeze the juice from every single ounce of fruit that they get from that company, then that's a win to us. And we've built a great, beautiful business. And our customers will have increase in their LTV, will have an increase in their expansion opportunity, an increase in their upsell opportunity, and an increase in their renewal percentages. Those are wins for us.
A couple of folks in the chat on the side here and have pinged me even through my phone here have asked to see Peel in action. We can't do it because of the StreamYard software here, an easy way to do that, but I'd love to ask your commitment to revisit that with some of the folks who are asking, that we could set up some calls and show people real life, what does Peel do, how does it look, and how would it help them?
We can set up a Peel following this webinar for people to actually give us key takeaways and allow us to sort of engage with that thinking.
I think that'd be fun. Let's you and I go build a Peel and go share it with the folks who are here listening. How do people find you if they want to talk to you more about this? How do they track you down?
I'm Ben at getpeel.ai. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm regularly talking on there. I'd love to communicate and meet you out there. I'm always available, and our website is getpeel.ai.
Thanks for hanging out, Ben. I know you have to get in your car and get going, so I'm not going to ask you to spend more time with my friends and me here, but thank you for this, and thanks for hanging out with us.
Well, it was my pleasure. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Also, one of my favorite holidays. Second to Halloween, if I'm being honest, but a close second. And I just love that they're 3 weeks apart from each other.
It makes a good month for you, right?
It makes a great month. Yeah, it makes a great month. All right, everybody. Well, thanks again. My pleasure. Really great experience. Thanks again.
So, guys, thanks for listening to that conversation. I am very excited by what Ben's doing, and I'm thrilled to have that opportunity to share it with you. Let's talk a little bit about my future here. I have some notes in front of me so I don't overlook anything, and all I really want to do is take a minute before we wrap up to give you some understanding of what's coming next in terms of this show and the other shows. I have a big announcement I'm going to make, but I'm only going to make it a teaser announcement here. I've been doing these shows as the host for the last 6 months as a solo act. And one of my friends in the industry came to me a week and a half ago and said, is there any way that we could co-host these shows together? And he's a guy that I've known for a long time and really admired for a long time. And I think we're going to make that happen starting next month, that he and I are going to start to co-host the show. And it's going to be twice the show for you guys, and I'm excited to bring you more on that soon. But know that a big time co-host is coming to this thing. Next month, I've asked to have a conversation with a company I touched on in the past that I also think very highly of. And if you don't know them, you got to check them out. They're called Opinator, Opinator. You can find them on the web. They're worth taking a look at. They are what I think to be the future of voice of the customer. Opinator.com. I'm not going to spoil the story for you. I'm going to have Felipe from Opinator join me next month in December, and we'll unpack that then. Until then, my friends, once again, let me know if you want a copy of Sean's book. It's a terrific book. For that matter, let's do this. Let's make this a little bit bigger. You've heard me talk about Carl's book before. If you want a copy of Carl's book, let me know. I'll get you a copy. And also, if you want a copy of another book we've talked about here that Michael and Diane wrote called Experience Rules, again, same deal. Let me know. I'm happy to get a copy to you. So if you want one of these other books from my past shows, or Sean's book from this show, or any combination of these things, all you need to do is say, hey, Mark, send me a copy of the book, and I'll make sure you get it as my gift to you. So with that, my friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me here. And I'm so glad to share this show with you and just to get a chance to spend 30, 40, 45 minutes together. And I will see you over the next few days on my next show. Until then, thanks, guys, and happy Thanksgiving. Take care of yourselves.